Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Doing Life Radio. Joyce, what do we have going on today?
Today we're interviewing my very best friend,
Miranda Plowman.
We've got Miranda on the show today, and you're in for a treat. You're going to love her just as much as we do. She's really the most sincere, authentic person you will ever come to meet. We just adore her. Unfortunately, we don't see her too often. Our friendship is mostly over the phone. But we do live in the same city. Our kids go to the same school, so we can sometimes catch her at the school events. But listen in, she's got really an incredible story, and you'll soon learn why we don't see her out socially too much unless it happens to be at school. Then we snag her up and give her hugs because we don't know when we'll see her again. So yeah, listen in.
It's a great episode. We get to learn about people dealing with the silent and the secret struggles. I guess secret's the wrong word. The
silent struggles.
Silent struggles. So listen in and let's all learn and grow together. This is Doing Life Radio. All right, we're back with another Doing Life Radio podcast, and today is different because it's more than just Joyce and I.
That's right. We've got a special guest, my bestie, Miranda.
Surprise, the first person in here.
So today we're talking about doing life when life is hard. So obviously we knew the person to bring in was Miranda because
she's difficult to deal with.
So difficult to deal with, yeah. No, she's had some serious struggles in her life. So I thought we'd bring her in. Could you just tell us kind of what the last 8 years of your life has looked like, in a nutshell?
Yeah, just 8 years, couple sentences, no problem.
Yeah, no problem. I'm super quiet and I don't have a problem speaking too much. So I'm Miranda Plowman. I'm 36 years old. My husband and I just celebrated our 16 wedding anniversary.
Congratulations.
That's
where we need one of those like clapping sound effects.
That's
and
right.
Stuff like that.
That would be amazing.
Little thing, confetti.
We have 3 kids. We have 2 daughters and a son. We have
Let's hold back on those kids because this is part of what helped enhance the relationship. Now, we know that 2 of your kids are very close age to our 2 boys.
Yeah, we were pregnant together twice.
Yes, so Joyce and I were very close to begin with, but there is nothing like being pregnant together that will bond you for life.
Absolutely.
You need somebody to understand because as much as we know that you were probably very understanding and my husband Phil was probably very understanding.
Yeah, we're the best.
They don't get it.
They don't get it.
You have to find a buddy
I
to
do
go through
know
this with.
that my son was less than 2 months old, and we already knew who he was going to date, who he was going to marry,
That's right.
what our future was going to look like.
Let me tell you, so I'm a picture person, and their wedding album will be amazing. We have pictures from the day that they were born.
She has more pictures of my children than I do. She truly is a picture person.
That's a very true
not
story.
So much. If I'm trying to put something together, I'll be like, Miranda, do you have pictures of my son's 5th birthday party? Can you send them over? And she's like, I'm on it.
I also have been very excited by some of the posts that you post. And then I realized that Sam took the pictures and you just shared it.
He definitely took the pictures. I'm like, yeah, it's same with him. Can you send those to my phone so I can post them? I never think to take a picture.
Yeah, if it's not blurry, I took it.
That's the truth.
If the quality is a
We've
little
got
low.
you covered. You're okay.
So anyway, yes, we had
yourself.
2 of our babies together. Miranda being the always overachiever, went for number 3. We did not.
It was good, but number 3 was rough. So she's currently 8 years old. The beginning of my pregnancy was kind of boring. And then at 20 weeks, it took a drastic turn. I went into preterm labor. I spent the next 16 weeks on bed rest, which was not fun, but we did it because we needed to do it. It was what she needed to be safe and healthy. Yeah. Luckily, she came. She was perfectly fine, and we're happy to have 3 now. So after she was born, my body just didn't bounce back. And everybody kept saying, we have 3 kids, you're exhausted, that's normal. But something just wasn't right. And I was very lucky to have a good, compassionate, loyal primary doctor to help me find what was going on. And when she was 9 months old, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. It wasn't the ideal diagnosis that I had. I was kind of hoping for something. I just take a quick pill and it goes away. That's not how fibromyalgia works.
Can you tell us what exactly is fibromyalgia?
So this gets super complicated. I have Googled and researched it over the years, and it's shocking how much information changes. So when I first was diagnosed, I went to a rheumatologist because they thought it was arthritis. And then I went to an autoimmune doctor because they thought it was autoimmune. Now I can deal with it through pain management or a primary care doctor, but the Journal of American Medical Association is pushing it to go back to an autoimmune.
So yeah, I always assumed it was an autoimmune disorder.
It's very similar. They just haven't been able to put it under the heading of autoimmune yet, but they're trying. But so when I was Googling it the other night, I came across things that are never something you want to read from a medical journal. Things like the medical community is still baffled by why this happens.
So what is happening? Like your body is feeling like it has arthritis? Is that what's happening?
So basically, and everybody has different symptoms, but for me personally, my system is just like, oh, I'm touching you. Nope, that's pain. I am feeling sensation of cold. Oh no, that my body turns it into pain. So I just have extreme exhaustion. I don't sleep like ever. And my body
She's
just
posting
aches.
at like 4 a.m. I'm like, why is Miranda awake? What is all this going on?
This is very true, because when, you roll over and the husband is snoring next to you and you're like, I'm really jealous. Should I smother with her pillow? You take your feelings to Facebook or other social media where there are other people awake who understand. Yes.
That's what social media was invented for, other people's problems.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's kept my husband alive all of this time through my sleepless nights. So I'm sure that he's very excited to have that as well. So anyway, when my daughter was about 9 months old, I was diagnosed. And I wasn't happy to have that diagnosis, but I thought, okay, at least I know what's going on. Because in reality, I thought, am I just exhausted from having kids? Like, maybe I really just do need to suck it up. So when I found out, no, you don't need to suck it up, I was like, oh, shoo. Okay, now what do we do?
A little validation, right?
Exactly, exactly. So for the first year and a half of our youngest daughter's name was Ella, life was okay. Yeah, I had fibromyalgia, but I was dealing with it. I decided, so I was a nail tech prior to going out on maternity leave, and I decided to really focus on my other part-time job working from home with a wellness company. That gave me the greatest flexibility of time. I hit some major business goals in that first year and a half. I was trying.
You were really killing it. Everyone was looking at you, and
I was excited. I felt like if I'm leaving my kids, this was what I wanted to be leaving my kids for. Like it kind of fulfilled me. Yeah. I had pride in what I was doing, and I enjoyed going to work. And I got to work around my kids' schedules. It was the best of all worlds.
Yeah,
fantastic.
It's a win.
I was trying different fibromyalgia treatments. I was hopeful. I knew very little about fibromyalgia at that point, but I thought, oh, I've got this. Like, I can totally take care of this. If anybody can beat it, I can. A positive attitude will totally fix everything.
And I do believe if anybody could beat it, you could.
Well, thank you very much. Only because I have the support system that I do, and you're a major part of that.
Oh, thank you.
So life was good. And then in the summer of 2011, my life took a turn and the trajectory changed like I wouldn't have believed due to a woman who was talking on her cell phone and decided to run a stop sign. I was in a pretty severe car accident that would ultimately lead to a spinal fusion of my L4, L5, and S1. So that was obviously not ideal. And because my body likes to be complicated and never be considered boring, we decided to take a little detour through oncology when they found a tumor in my chest. Luckily, everything turned out to be fine, but since, I guess for the past 8.5 years, I've had 2 major surgeries. I started counting the doctors that I have been to in that point. I hit 42 and stopped counting because it was just too depressing. And that's not counting like the doctors that I see monthly. That's 42 different doctors. So obviously, I can rack up some medical bills like nobody's business.
So just to clarify, you got injured in the accident.
Correct.
Did that the fibromyalgia, did that complicate it, or was it now you have 2 things running simultaneously? You have the pain from the accident and then fibromyalgia, and they didn't cross paths.
Exactly.
So treatment had to run 2 different courses still.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like when you deal with a car accident because of insurance, like you have to do it under your car
There's
insurance.
There's a third pain that you now have to deal with, is dealing with insurance companies.
I feel like I became a little bit of an expert in this field, and I would totally give that title of expert back to not have dealt with this. It was not worth it.
We did make a promise on this podcast, no experts, but lots of opinions,
right.
so you're welcome.
Thanks. So I guess we're going to really be talking today about the process of what it was like then to what it was like now.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. We're definitely, as far as, we're looking at avenues of life and the different struggles that individuals have. And like maybe I'm close to the situation because I'm close to your best friend. But outside,
I love how you called her my best friend and not your wife.
Exactly. That's
we
how
all know who
that's
she
definitely
is.
how it feels
Exactly.
sometimes. Phone rings, wife disappears for a few hours. I
He
can
knows
assume,
what's going on.
either I should have taken a shower earlier or she's on the phone with you. But so even from that perspective, I've been on the outside, and the only real information I knew is that you were going through something. And I think that's kind of the idea that we're looking at is a lot of times we can look at individuals, we don't know what's going on. And there was you're still like, Joyce and I talking, you're still at all the sporting events. You're still, your kids are involved in everything.
Yeah,
like
she's such a present parent
Yeah.
that I think people don't know what they don't know, she would be at every sporting event, every musical, every concert, and you always looked very put together. So I think people didn't understand when you couldn't go to other things because you weren't feeling well. So tell us a little bit of what is that like when people don't realize how sick you really are, but you actually can't even get out of bed?
I guess that there are a lot of feelings that I feel inside, and then there's a lot of feelings that you can see. And obviously you have an inside scoop to them, but for the general public, it is extremely confusing. Like, is she lying? Like when she says, I can't do this, what does that really mean? Because I look okay showing up to these things.
Does she not want to?
Exactly. Like,
it sounds like fibromyalgia is a good excuse not to have to go to that party that you don't want to go to.
Exactly.
Excellent.
And it's this invisible illness. And for years, I literally thought, wouldn't it be easier to like break my leg? And then people see the cast and they go, oh goodness, I'm so sorry. What can I do? And not that I wanted that. I just kind of wanted that understanding to be like, when I say, I'm sorry, I can't do it, trust me when I tell you to make that phone call makes me sick to my stomach because it just feels like I'm flaking. Even on you, like, hey, we're meeting for coffee, and I'm like, Joyce, I can't make it. And I didn't know 3 days before that I couldn't make it. It's been on my calendar.
Right. Sometimes you wouldn't know 3 hours ahead of time. We'd be talking, all right, I'll see you in a couple of hours, and then you'd be like, Joyce, I have a migraine, I'm going to bed now. And, okay, just like that, things have changed because
and
you
I
can't
know
predict it.
that you're going to be understanding for that. And still I have that feeling of, I'm letting her down. She's busy with 2 children and working, and she's scheduled this time. And it feels very much not like, hey, I'm sorry, I can't make it. I need to take care of myself. It feels like, I don't really like you. You're not worth my time. I'm choosing to do something else.
Yeah.
And I had to finally, and this is part of what you've been helpful to realize I would never treat you that way.
Yeah.
And you're not treating me that way. So why the heck am I treating myself that way?
Right.
Like, I'm not helping anybody.
That's a really wise thing.
That was pretty big. Well, that concludes our podcast. Take that one away from you.
I am an expert.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how just in the broad scheme of life, we put things on other people.
Yeah.
That they
or we put them on ourselves.
Well, we put it on ourselves. Like we try to look at ourselves from their perspective, and that they would never in their wildest dreams look at us that way.
Yeah.
And that's a broad spectrum things, but you intimately were dealing with that, like you said, every phone call.
Because you were present at the kids' events, people would think
it makes it look worse.
Miranda can make it. She just is choosing not to. And I don't think people realized the difficulty it would take to sit through a concert, and that sometimes you'd be sitting
and
underneath
not just a third grade
all
concert.
of these like cushions and pillows just to kind of be able to sit upright.
Oh, I look like I'm moving in sometimes when I show up. Like, I have a TENS unit attached. I probably smell like some kind of medicated lotion I've put on. I usually come with a pillow. Like,
I remember for one
I'm high
school
maintenance.
play, you were discharged from the hospital, and you went from the hospital to the school play. You didn't even have time to stop home and change because you kept telling the doctor, I will be discharged in time, and you made it to that play by the skin of your teeth. And
I did.
Who knew? Like, I'm sure people looking around thought, oh, here comes Miranda, and had no idea you literally left the hospital. And how you were probably in there for 4 or 5 days?
I think at that point I was in there for 3 days. It did not go well. And yeah, literally when we went to the hospital, I was like, listen, I have to be up Friday by 5 o'clock. My daughter's in Annie. I just need to be there. I was like, do what you need to do. You have 3 days.
Right.
Like, and then time is
Drug
up.
me up and send me out the door.
My husband didn't really enjoy those 3 days because every phone call, text message, or like, hey, I'm breaking out.
Get me out of here.
Yes.
Jailbreak time.
I think the doctors finally discharged, in all honesty, so at the time my heart rate was creeping higher and higher because if you've ever been in the hospital, you know that this is not a calm situation to be in. You're not sleeping, things are going off, like it's just annoying and it's difficult to relax. So my heart rate kept creeping up and up, and finally the doctor said, I don't know that you being in the hospital is beneficial to the stress level that you're under. Go home. You need to follow up with your doctor.
What is that doctor's name? Because I think everyone wants that doctor.
If only we had come to that conclusion 2 days
2 days
ago.
earlier,
Yes.
right?
You would have been calmer.
Thank you, genius.
Yes.
So let's back up a little bit. You said you've seen 40-ish doctors, probably significantly more, and one of them was an oncologist, and then you briefly said, but everything is fine.
Yes.
But you have a pretty decent scar on your chest.
I do.
Why don't you tell us what that's about? Because clearly everything wasn't fine at the time.
I thought it was gang initiation.
There we go. So did I make out well or did I not make out well?
You're in now, right?
Oh, I'm in. All right,
You're
cool. So okay. After my car accident, few months after, I went to see a spinal surgeon at the request of one of the doctors. And it's funny because she said, you need a spinal fusion. And I was like, heck to the no. That's no, nope.
I'm with you.
Like, it was just, there wasn't even a thought process. Like, going to the surgeon was difficult enough. And I'm like, nope. And she's like, okay, fine. I totally understand where you're coming from. But I guess that you're going to run the gambit of treatment options and we're going to see you in about 2 years for your spinal fusion. Absolutely not. That's never going to happen. By the way, I had spinal fusion 3 years later. 3 years.
So she was wrong. It took 3 years. You really took the long way around.
Only because when you're dealing with car insurance and you have a problem, I ended up in the emergency room a lot for pain and muscle spasms. So when I was in there one time, they found something in my chest, like a murmur or something. They did a CAT scan. Again, I'm like, great, rack up the medical bills. This is not anything we need. I'm in pain. Of course you're hearing something. Everything's out of whack. And then the doctor came back. And he sat on my bed, and I was like, get up, that's not a good sign.
That is not a good sign.
And I was like, yes. And of course, by the way, I had been to the doctor so many times. My dad had dropped me off. I'm like, come back in a few hours and get me. You don't need to sit here with me. I'm fine.
You knew the process at this point. You were going to get what you needed. And,
yeah. So he comes back, and he's like, so there's a mass. And I'm like, oh, okay, is that happening in my spine? And I'm like, wait, we didn't do scans of my spine. And he's like, nope, it's in your chest. It's between your lungs. You have a thymus, which should be going away when you're a toddler. Mine did not. Mine continued to grow and grow and grow. So we accidentally found it. It was not a good day.
No,
but still I thought, it's probably just something, like mass, tumors, it's just a bunch of cells, right? Well, mine turned out to be like this big.
What?
It was not like so
what is that? Because they might not be able to see you, like 6-8 inches?
Yes.
Okay.
So
don't we love the visual things for a podcast?
Yeah, I mean, some people are watching it on YouTube, I'm sure, but other people are like, how big was it? What's a thymus?
Yes. Well, okay, so
that was my first question.
Right, yeah.
What is a thymus, and do I have one?
So when the doctor said it to me, I corrected him and said, you mean thyroid, right?
Yes, that's exactly what I thought too.
Yes, and still to this day when people ask and I say my thymus and they're like, I thought your thyroid wasn't
You're pronouncing
there.
it wrong.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had this thing that most people should have gone away and mine did not. So what I didn't realize is that the car accident in 2011 discovered this mass that would ultimately really probably save my life. Because unfortunately, there's not really symptoms that come from this. Like I was feeling a little short of breath. That's the only symptom that I could possibly put towards that. But I easily justified that with, I'm exhausted. I'm not doing anything. My body is in pain. Like I'm probably just really out of shape and I get winded because I'm out of shape.
Yeah, I get winded all the time.
Yeah, so I didn't know to be a symptom. So long story short, we spent about a year trying to figure out what the heck was going on, and ultimately they decided that it needed to come out because there just was no way to tell if it was cancerous or not. Now, I'm very fortunate that it came out and it was precancerous. It hadn't turned into cancer yet.
Yay!
Which is amazing because in reality, only about 30% of the people who get diagnosed with thymic cancer actually see the other side of it. Your 5-year prognosis is not great.
Wow.
And there's no way this is not something anybody goes looking for. It's super rare. Like it's less than 1% of the population. Wow. So God kind of said, all right, we're going to start a few years in a day. Like the car accident had to happen in order to be able to find this mass that could have ultimately ended me. So I had surgery. It was not fun. I had to crack my ribs and take it out. But luckily, the surgery was all that I needed to do. I didn't have to go through chemo or radiation. I do 5-year follow-ups every little bit. And other than that, it sucked to go through, but I'm glad to be on the other side.
Yeah.
Did you get to see it afterwards?
Okay, so Phil asked the surgeon for a picture, and
Phil
yes, I have
husband.
a picture. Yes, my husband, Phil. These are the details they care about. And yes, he sent us a picture.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Wow.
It hasn't made it to the scrapbook just yet, but you never know.
Yeah, I don't think that one made it to Facebook. I don't remember seeing
it. Did
that.
not. It just felt weird to be showing something that was inside of you.
Oh my gosh,
it's just weird.
Yeah. So yeah, you've had that surgery. You've had surgery on your back. I guess that was from you had a second car accident then, right?
So no, the first car accident was what ultimately led to all of this stuff. So the car accident was 2011. The chest surgery was in 2013, and then in 2014 is when I had the spinal surgery. Because again, I thought, I am so Superman. Like, I remember sitting with my surgeon oncologist and saying, can we possibly do both surgeries at the same time? Wham, bam, thank you, man.
I'm already out.
Exactly.
Right?
I already have to
anesthesia.
recover.
Fitted for a gown, you're good to go.
Yeah, exactly. And they assured me no. So I said, okay, well, what's the soonest that I could get surgery? And he said, well, you're probably looking at a year. And I was like, but what's medically the earliest that I can do it? He said, I couldn't clear you for anything earlier than 8 weeks. And I said, great. I left that doctor. I called the spinal surgeon. And I said, I'd like to schedule the surgery for 8 weeks out. It turned into a year later. Apparently these doctors know what they're talking about a little bit more than me.
They're all in a group together forming against you.
That's kind of what it felt like. I'm like, why won't you just work with me? I've got a plan. Just stick to the plan. I'm used to being the mom. I'm kind of in charge of these things.
That's right.
And the medical field, suddenly you're not in charge. And it's extremely difficult to be able to finally, like my husband tells them often, just ignore her. Like she thinks she knows what's best.
He tells us that too.
I'm not surprised. Like I often find myself justifying things to doctors and they're like, oh, is that how that works? I'm like, yeah. And Phil's like, they're making fun of you. Like you sound like a crazy person. But yes, so surgery's not fun. Unfortunately, both of my surgeries ended up to be a little bit more complicated with infections and all kinds of weird complications, and everything just took so much longer than the original 8 weeks that I really hoped that I was going to be good to go in.
So tell us what you think about the medical community in general. Do you think that they are, you keep hearing big pharma, they're only in it for the money, but obviously there has to be some people who are in it to help others, and do you feel like you've had good care and that your doctors communicated with one another to see you as a whole and not just see, one doctor for your spine and one doctor for your thymus and so on and so forth?
I would totally recommend anybody listening that if you can get a good primary doctor who can be your sounding board for anything, that's where you go to.
Okay.
And I was fortunate to have that, and she really, at some point it felt like she was coordinating a circus of doctors and all of the people that I was seeing. And every time I'd show up with her, I'd have a new booklet of information from another doctor who wanted this all to be in my file. And I met some really not nice doctors who were like, all right, you're here, set the timer, you've got your 2 minutes, and then we're done. I don't do anything in 2 minutes, especially when it comes to speaking.
I think those listening by now can figure
that
out.
out. Yes. So it just felt very brushed off. And for a little while, I just thought that's the way that it needs to be. And I'm the patient and I'll do what I can. But I learned quickly that obviously you have to be your best advocate. And also that the doctor is working for you. So I finally got to the point where I would call a doctor that I had heard good things about, and I'd say, I'd really love to do like a phone interview just to see if you and I are going to be a good fit. Because I found that I was traveling 2 hours to most of my doctors. And I traveled 2 hours to sit down and be like, oh, this is not going to work together.
Would they take a phone interview with you?
I had many doctors who would or emailed.
Amazing.
And the doctors that wouldn't, no problem.
Right.
It's probably not going to be
time for them if they didn't have time for you.
Exactly. So
That's
I found
great.
that was really great for me to be able to share, here's what I would like to do, because I didn't want to jump right into the medicines and stuff. If there was a holistic way to do it, I'd like to do that. I wanted a combination of both. Many doctors are not into that. Many doctors, this is what you're supposed to be taking, you do this, and you're done.
By the book, this is how it's supposed to be done.
Exactly. And it's kind of funny that in the 8 years since the car accident, how much has changed. Like I was just at a doctor this past week, and I had talked to her years past about massage and acupuncture, and she's a pain medication doctor. She's here for one thing. Yes. Yeah. And she's like, well, do what you want, but you're not going to get any relief. The other day, she tells me, oh, you're having a problem sleeping? Have you been using lavender essential oils? I hear it's just like taking a Valium. Now, I was impressed that she was happy with the essential oils, but I also thought you might be overselling the lavender.
Just a pinch.
I've actually never taken Valium, but I am 100% sure it is not
more than diffusing lavender in your bedroom.
It's good to know that Facebook advertising will even convince doctors.
Yeah.
You never know.
Everyone's into oils now, so there we go.
So, speaking of holistic care, I'm sure you got a gamut of information from, friends and loved ones who mean so well that were trying to sell you, lotions and potions and telling you to drink your cinnamon with your honey in your tea and, all of these great recommendations. So do you have any really funny stories about that?
Well, I do really. Okay, so specifically for my back, again, I have rods and screws and I go off through a metal detector.
She is not fun to bring to an airport.
No. So I really love being told if you stretched, you'd be all better.
Oh, that's great advice.
And for a while I thought, am I just not doing the right stretches?
They put the flexible bars in, right? So you're good to go.
Yeah. And after having tried every stretch under the sun, I do think that stretching is important and it's important to move. It's not magic. Like, let's be honest. And I appreciate that it might have worked for you. That's amazing. And in reality, the only feeling I have about that is jealousy, because that didn't work for me. And it's interesting to hear, like, apple cider vinegar cures everything, right?
Yeah, I've read that.
Yeah. And multiple people tell me, if you just drink that, and I'm like, cool, so should I drink like 3 gallons a day?
Should I destroy my esophagus to save, another ailment?
Exactly.
Bathe in it, soak in it.
Yeah, so there's been some very interesting things. But yeah, stretching is always very interesting. And they'll give you these, like, there's sheets and there's Pinterest boards about all this. And generally it's like, try to touch your toes. I have 3 kids. Not that I'm doing stretches all the time, but just life in general has me moving enough. So yeah, that doesn't really, it used to make me angry. And generally every doctor will say, well, have you tried this? And I used to go to the doctor and just my face would turn red and I would have rage. And I'm like, I'll try that.
I'll give it
Thank
a
you.
whirl.
And I try to not choke on my words. But yeah, it's always interesting. And there's always amazing things. There's supplements out there. And I will say all of that stuff helps.
Okay.
But you can't look at it as it's going to be the thing that fixes you. Because in reality, you get to that point of desperation where anything. And so when somebody says something like that to me, they're, I think, for the most part, trying to be kind. Hey, I heard this new good thing. And then I go,
maybe you don't have the internet. Let me help.
yes. Right. And then I think, I don't know that that's going to work, but maybe it will work. And that seed kind of sits in my brain. And before you know it, I've had 24 hours and I'm like, this is going to be the thing that changes me. And then a week later or 30 days later or 6 months later, as some things take, I'm like, I guess we can check that off the list. And so you kind of go through this system of, it's not going to work. Oh, there's a little bit of hope. I'm super hopeful. I'm okay. I've got this. To, oh, that didn't work. And it's not that it just didn't work. It's like, it didn't work. And that's the 12th thing that I tried and nothing's ever going to work. Like, it's this crazy roller coaster that, what are your options? To not ride the roller coaster and just feel hopeless all the time? Well, that's not a good way to live. But you also have to manage your expectations to know, what am I trying to get out of this? And ultimately, I try to, thank you very much for your advice. I hope that your advice helps me. I hope by 5 to 10%. Where now, before I thought it's going to be a fix. 100% I'm good to go.
You found the cure.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with the very well-meaning people who tell you things like, have you prayed about it? Do you maybe have some unconfessed sin in your life? Do you think you're being punished for something? Have you experienced anything like that?
I have. Probably the jerkiest person I've ever experienced with is myself. Like, I really thought, what was I doing?
I was really looking forward to this story.
I'm sure there's people out there that might agree with that statement.
Yeah, I really, you know what I found? I started journaling and writing my thoughts down. And it allowed me to look back and be like, yeah, you were not nice to yourself at all. And I read this interesting thing recently about kids, and especially in these teenage years, because having boys and girls. And one of the main differences between boys and girls, boys in the teenage years tend to get a little bit more external. And if they're trying to destroy something, it's externally. Girls tend to do more of the damage internally. And crap if I wasn't like, and at 36 years old, I'm still doing this? That's so sad, and something that I needed to change. And in 2018, I really tried to do a lot of that changing. But no, I totally questioned, was this something? Or was this God trying to be like, hey, you need to get on track with something else? And I just was being bullheaded, and he had to throw a car in front of me to make me see it? I still don't know what the answer is. I can say that the car accident allowed them to find the mass, which ultimately was life-changing in the most amazing ways. But for a while there, I still had a hard time, like, maybe they could have found it somewhere else. Maybe there's something else going on. Like, I feel like I constantly said, I'm waiting to see how God's plan works out. And actually, I was doing a little research for this, and I was shocked to see how many of my Facebook posts said something like, I'm waiting to see God's plan. And it hit me late 2017, why the heck am I waiting for God's plan? It's been happening this whole time. I saw it as an end goal destination, and that's not exactly how, that's not at all how it works.
Not at all,
No, it's not. And if you think about it, like, it's a very personal relationship that needs daily feeding from both of us. I'm talking to God constantly, he's talking back to me. And so to say, hey, I'm gonna see you in 5 years when it's all fixed, I kind of checked him out of it for a bit too much and thought that I was in control of things. And that was not good on me. But I will say, other people saying stuff, I have definitely had people, you need to fast. You need to fast. You need to figure out how long you can fast for. You need to focus, and you need to pray. And
Pour
I thought,
oil on your head.
yes. And I thought, okay, I need to do that. And at the time, I was on a good amount of medication, and I thought, oh, well, I can't fast
because you're taking medication,
food,
right?
like,
yes, and I told a woman that, and she said, well, you need to decide what's more important to you.
Wow.
Your relationship with God so that he can heal you, or taking your medication. And didn't say it out loud, but definitely alluded to, obviously you're picking the medication, you must be a drug addict.
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah, and at that point in time, your fists clench.
Right.
That's when your prayer life enhances. Dear Lord, please
Don't let me
bind
kill
my
this
hands.
person.
Let her walk away from this.
Because I'm probably definitely not getting better medical care in prison. That's probably where I was headed.
Maybe.
Maybe, you never know.
You don't have to pay for it then. So.
This is true.
But that's another route we don't need to go down.
Yeah, we won't go there today.
Yeah.
I love that perspective that you look at and seeing it as a journey and not just a destination, because I think a lot of times we get caught up into trying to figure out what is the exact meaning. Okay, this thing happened to me, so there's a reason for it. Why?
Yeah.
I need to answer now why. And I've always come to the conclusion in my own personal life, if you can understand the why, then why would you want to follow that person? So, like, if God is so big and God's plan is so much bigger and broader and he sees so much more than what we can possibly comprehend, if we can figure him out, what good is that? Yeah. I want a God that's beyond comprehension. And I know some people walk through pain, like you're walking through some different pains and learning. You're walking through life in a completely different way than I am. But ultimately, God has a plan and there's a direction for it. You've been blessed enough to see a result from that, where God said, okay, I'm going to give you this little nugget here where, we're going to find this thing and this accident led to that. So I'm going to give that to you. You may never find out what the ultimate purpose is for everything, and coming to a peace with that, one, incredible struggle. That is incredibly difficult. And I know there's a lot of people who are probably listening, going through something right now, thinking the exact same thing. Well, I can't understand it. I'm just going to give up. But I can see right now, just listening to you, you haven't given up. Yeah. And you are still walking this journey. And I'm sure that you have good days and bad days. Like we talked about recently, a lot of things about life is being willing to fail, being willing to fall, and then getting back up. And that's ultimately what it is. God's not afraid of you questioning him. God's not afraid of you getting upset at him. Ultimately, he just wants you to continue that journey, continue walking. And it is a daily thing.
You touched on something that was interesting. I thought that I had figured out, I thought I justified the car accident. That's how they found the tumor. Mm-hmm. And I just need to let it go. And sometimes I let it go, and then sometimes it comes back, and it's never really gone.
That's fair.
But literally last night, it's kind of been a struggle getting ready for this. Like, I've been reading through old Facebook posts and diary stuff, and I'm like, I'm so glad to not be in the worst of it right now. Mm-hmm. But it was also really difficult to go back through. And literally last night, I'm like, I don't think this is the right thing to do. What am I doing? And then I kind of just sat and prayed with it. And my prayers sometimes are very silent. And I'm like, dear God, I'd like to open the communication. I don't know that I have anything nice to say right now.
Your turn.
Yes, mm-hmm. Honestly, because
I love that. I love that. Your turn.
But yeah, it's been weird. But even last night, I kind of came to the conclusion, maybe by doing this, somebody will feel like, okay, I'm not alone, and I get it. Because ultimately, you're not alone. Like, we live in the world of people and technology where you can reach out in some kind of way. So even still, I find myself struggling to be, because if you can find that purpose, like if I found that one person who's like, you going through what you did made all the difference in the world, then I feel like my pain would kind of have a purpose. Mm-hmm. And that I can wrap my head around. Just pain for no purpose is confusing and difficult and frustrating and annoying.
You say that, and I, just as a word of encouragement, you have 3 babies in your house that are watching a mom endure the pain, and yet is still there.
Still showing up to everything. You don't
know what your pain right now is doing for the strength of your kids when they get older. And you might never really truly see that until the end times we get a chance to look back on our life and say, you know what? Because my kids saw me go through that, you get to see how they deal with struggles too. And so you might have that person right in your own house. Eventually down the road, will come to crossroads in their own lives, and they might have pain that's worse. They might not. They might have pain that's significantly less. But looking at how mom dealt with it, you're being a wonderful testimony for them. So that one person you're waiting for might just be the kid you're feeding tonight.
Yeah, you're right. You know what though? It's interesting to see the mindset changes, because for a while, like, I appreciate that you say I'm showing up for all the kids' events. I still felt like I'm not succeeding in everything that I've got on my list. And for the longest time, I felt like a failure because I'm not doing what I used to be able to do. I always have to compare like the old me to the new me. And that sometimes is very frustrating. And I had to just kind of make the list of what's important. And the kid stuff is important. And yeah, so my house isn't always clean. Sometimes I don't have the energy to do that. And I just need to get over that for myself. But knowing that I kind of went through that, possibly I could have a different outcome from the tumor that they found, it makes me, my kids need me, and I'm glad that I can be here. So the days that I still...
things that are secondary are secondary.
Yes. And one of the biggest... So in early 2018, I decided to make some changes. I wasn't really sure what those changes were going to be. I just knew that I needed to make the changes. And one of the things that my husband and I sat down to do is I made a list of priorities. I mean, very basic priorities, like 1, 2, and 3. And if everything below 4 through 100 gets wiped off the list, I need to be okay with that.
At least the priorities are taken care of.
So I made my list, my husband Phil made his list, and then we sat down and compared them. And really, I gave myself the opportunity to say, yeah, I cooked dinner, everybody had a great dinner. By the time dinner gets done, I'm generally dying from sitting in the chair that I'm like, and the dishes kind of sit there. And that would kill me. And now I'm like, no, I have the okay. That's not on the top of priorities. It's okay. We had that family time. We had that meal, sometimes healthy, sometimes not. But we all were fed. We had that time together. And that's okay. But it's difficult to do, especially probably as women, to allow ourselves. But again, I put myself, I wouldn't judge somebody else for acting this way. So why am I judging myself?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about vanity.
Okay.
Because we are women, not you, sorry.
I'm
but you
so glad we clarified that.
But you can identify with some vanity. And I know you went through a short period where the meds and your body were not agreeing and you didn't look like yourself.
Mm-mm. And that's hard.
Yeah.
So for the longest time, so in the very beginning of fibromyalgia and my car accident, I kind of just tried to put on the facade of who I was before, and I'm just going to keep up on that.
Keeping up appearances.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. My background is in cosmetology. I worked with the same salon as Joyce, so you have to show up looking half decent. You know, if you're going to say, yeah, I'm doing nails and hair, you can't look like a mess. That's just not good business. So I kept up that appearance. And there is something to be said for when you look good, like yourself, you feel a little
look
better.
Good, feel good,
yes.
Yep.
But then I really got to the point where I just couldn't. And medication made me swollen and I gained a ton of weight and I just didn't have the energy to do everything. And so I found myself becoming a bit of a hermit because I felt like if I can't put on, and I didn't want to call it a facade, I almost felt like it was my armor. Like I wanted to put my armor on. I needed that to be able to leave the house and talk to people. Because when people say, oh, it's good to see you, how are you? How do you answer? I'm good, how are you?
Yeah.
And then
Do
I'd be
you really
like,
want to know?
yes.
How much time have you got?
Yeah, exactly. Like I found myself questioning and almost like, oh, how close of friends are we? Like, what am I sharing?
Right.
But then it gets really difficult for people to understand when I'm like, oh, she just said she was good to me. And, you know, now she's saying to you she's not good. And again, I had to let myself off the hook for that. Like, I am who I am. But you have to still go out. You have to still try. You can't allow yourself to kind of just become a hermit and hibernate. And that's really what I allowed myself to do because I felt like I can't go out without this armor on of looking a certain way. And it's when you feel uncomfortable in your body, it's just not good.
It's terrible.
And everything hurt already and I just didn't look like myself or feel like myself. And I thought, if I'm not looking and feeling like who I am supposed to be, to you as a friend.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird? Like we're not the same relationships that we've built up. Like I almost felt like a new person. And so I really kind of cut down my friend list too. I have a ton of acquaintances and I love them all, but I found out who my true friends were. And unfortunately, you get all the details and the late night phone calls and therapy sessions, but I didn't need to give that to everybody else because you could look past the makeup on my face or the hair that's hiding under a hat.
I think most could. But there's only so many people you want to take the facade off for. Not the facade, but you understand what I'm saying. Your armor. I like that word, your armor. That's probably, because I think all of us put our armor on before we leave our house. Even like I'm totally healthy, but you know, Sam can attest. I look different at home than I do when I go out.
Glasses and ponytails. Yeah.
Right.
That's fine.
And beautiful.
Glasses, sweats.
Yeah, I like it. It's good for me, so it works out.
Yeah, so you look fantastic now.
Thank you.
I know you had put on some weight, but it's all come off. If they're watching you on YouTube, they probably think She looks like she's all better now. What you can't see
right
is
back in that vicious cycle. She looks fine.
She's sitting on some cushions so she can make it through this interview and survive it. She's probably going to be in pain when it's over, so I appreciate you doing this for us.
I'm glad to be here.
So what has changed? Has anything changed? Did your body just balance itself out over the years? What's going on with you?
I would love to say my body just got it together and figured it out.
Wouldn't that be great?
That'd be good. Write a book about it.
Yes.
And,
no.
we'll co-author it so we
Flew
get
off
credit.
into the sunset with your family.
Riding a horse. How nice would it be to ride a horse?
Yes,
I'm sure you can
and
do
like
that.
at the end, like for the end credit movies, and then she lived, and she was cured and happily
Yes.
ever after. You know, and I had to finally realize that that's probably not how my story ends, and I have to be okay with that, because now it's hard though, because when you accept that you have to be okay with that, how do you keep fighting to make it better?
It's not a matter, right? It's not a matter of giving up. It's a matter of accepting and then taking the
Living
steps.
in your circumstances.
Right,
Exactly.
Yeah. And thriving as best you possibly can.
And that's a perfect, I love that word. So I really, 2016 and 17 were the worst, I think. They weren't necessarily the worst pain that I was in, but at that point we realized that the spinal fusion hadn't really been successful, even though I will say that a year prior to that, I walked with a cane. It was not fun. Like, I went on my kindergartner's field trip with a cane. And I'm like, this is not...
And you weren't the grandmom in the group.
No.
So.
Being around kindergartners and having a cane, it's got to be
Could have
something.
come in handy.
That doesn't
I
sound like a
did think
terrible
about
idea.
that. Maybe I should bring it back out. So as much as the surgery helped with that, and I was able to literally leave the hospital without the cane, and I'm incredibly grateful for that.
Yeah.
It really is considered failed on every other aspect. And then this doctor came up. There's this thing called a spinal simulator that they can put in. It's almost like an internal TENS unit that's supposed to be magical for pain. And I allowed myself even more so to go on
your
that
hopes
hope.
up.
Yes, because it's the doctor telling me, and they brought a rep in with all of these amazing stories, and I'm like, this is amazing. And you go through this trial period, so you get to see how you're going to make out. And most everybody makes out amazingly. Then you do. It's not a very serious surgery. It's same day, and the recovery is only a few weeks. And I thought this is going to be.
It's amazing how she addresses, like, it's recover a few weeks. We're just in and out. You go
Right
in the
back
same
into your
day.
life.
No big deal.
We'd
It's
be
a simple
like,
surgery.
a couple of weeks, what are you doing to me?
But I was so hopeful. And then I had the trial done. And the first few days, I didn't feel anything else. But because I have fibromyalgia, everything affects me, and it takes me that much longer.
yeah.
Yes. So I expected that. And by the end, I got this awful infection, and they had to take it out more in an emergency situation, and they had to tell me that the surgery wouldn't be an opportunity. Now, honestly, I didn't really get relief from the trial that I did, but I still had that hope, because the trial can't nearly be as good as the final surgery.
Correct.
And I had that hope, and I threw so much of my time and energy into that hope that when they took it away, literally the doctor said, this isn't going to work. And Phil had been there with me because they had to take everything out, and I couldn't drive home afterwards. And as you can tell, I'm not very quiet, and literally I just shut my mouth. And Phil's like, you okay? And I'm like, I'm not. And I can't lie about it, and I just want to go. And the doctors wanted to talk, and I'm like, you really just got to let me go. If you want to talk to Phil. I'll be in the car. And I left. I literally walked out. Like, I didn't sign any paperwork. I just left. I couldn't be in that situation because the walls felt like they were closing in on me, and it just was heartbreaking. Even now, it's feeling a little bit heartbreaking. I'm feeling those moments. And I allowed myself to really get into a depressed state. Well, if my friends can't figure it out, Google hasn't told me anything that's going to fix me.
WebMD didn't handle
No.
everything? That's
Wow.
amazing.
The doctors haven't figured it out. Well, crap, now what do I do? And so I kind of got into the thought of, well, I guess this is just the way that it's going to be forever. And when I stopped fighting to make it better, even by just doing the small things, I got deeper and deeper and deeper. In 2016 and 17, like, I made a timeline about the stuff. Not great years in my book. But the end of 2017, I really came to the conclusion, I need to do something different. I need to make changes. Again, I didn't know what those changes were going to be. I was just trying to be positive. And I went from being brutally honest with the necessarily other people, like, hey, how you doing? To going back to, you know what? I'm doing okay for today. Because that's an honest answer. There are some days the answer is going to be, I'm having a really bad day. But for the most part, I should be able to say, I'm doing okay for me. And that's being honest to myself. It's giving you honest information. And it just started small things like that. I tried to plug in. You've done amazing. I've plugged into different small groups and Bible studies because of Joyce being like, we're doing this. And I think at one point she even said,
I bought you the book, you're coming.
Yeah. What day works best for you? And by the way, it wasn't just Joyce and I. It was like a group. And still it was like, we'll work around your schedule. And for months, truly, I think going to your house for that group was one of the only times during the week that I would leave the house. And there were days, and Phil had to drive me because I still wasn't driving at that time. Like, it was an inconvenience to everybody, but he knew how important it was for me to get out of the house. You knew how important it was for me to plug into something. And those small changes ultimately make huge life changes. But when you're coming from a chronic illness, especially an invisible one, you kind of have to go with small little changes. Now, I don't know about you guys. I know you've done really great with your keto diet and everything. Generally, we one day are eating everything on the shelves, and the next day we're like, oh no, today is the day, throw it all away. And I have found that my body can't do things like that. I really need to take things very gradually. Like, I used to be a runner and yoga and all of that kind of stuff. I got the runner's high. I enjoyed that. I can't now. Like that, I don't know that I could run if I was being chased. That's just not
you
gonna.
You got me.
Yes.
I'm
exactly.
it.
Yes. I'm just gonna have to give up. But so I got on. We bought an elliptical. We had a treadmill prior to. I just couldn't do the banging. So we got an elliptical to be less on my back. I got on, and when I tell you, I cried when I hit 6 minutes, and I was in so much pain. I literally, Phil had to help me off of it. And I was like, 6 minutes? I used to be able to run a mile in a little bit more than that. And I don't even have an idea. I probably walked like 10 steps ultimately. And so that was very frustrating. But in the same sense, it was what I needed to do to make those small changes.
Little by little.
Yeah. And so I went back to 5 minutes on the elliptical. And like I would do it once every 3 days. And then slowly I'd add like 30 seconds to it. 30 seconds to it. And it's such a different mindset because like when you go to the gym, you think, I got to work out and I'm going to push myself. And now I have to listen to my body. And before I get to that point of pain, I need to be like, okay, that's enough. I'm done. But it doesn't feel like a workout.
Which is contrary because when you work out, the pain tells you when to stop.
Exactly.
But in your situation, you can't get to the pain because you're going to have further complications. Another recovery.
Honestly, I would overdo it days and again, overdo it by like a minute. And it would put me in bed for 5 days where I'm like, I can't do anything.
I remember you doing a school field trip and you'd have to know the next week I'm out because I'm going to walk the zoo, and you would walk that zoo all day with whatever kid you were with, and you knew the price was going to be bed for a week, but you did what you had to do.
Yeah. Ultimately, I made those decisions, and it was really unfair to Phil to often be like, all right, like, I'm going on this field trip, and for 5 days before, I'm not doing anything to prepare my body, and 5 days after, I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to be checked out. But those memories, and it was important enough to me. Yeah. And we finally came, because he would be like, don't overdo it. Stay home. Like, this is not worth it. But it was worth it to my mental and emotional state. Like, it was therapy for my soul. Yes, exactly. So having the pain and the time to come back was worth every one of those excruciating steps.
What I'm really gathering from all this is that Phil needs a medal.
He
really big trophy.
He's a good guy, yeah.
Something, yeah.
I have to say, something that Phil did that really helped. Before one of my surgeries, he put a journal together, and he sent it around to a bunch of friends and family, and they wrote positive things to me. And I probably every few months still go through it and get that warm feeling of nothing else. I'm loved. And I can never say that I'm doing this on my own. One of the main terms in my Facebook posts is, I've got a really great village of people. Because we all know it takes a village to raise your family. And I have an amazing village of people who have stepped in to take care of them and me and Phil. But yeah, Phil deserves a medal. He has done some amazing things for me.
Big, obnoxious running medals.
Yeah, I actually remember that because sometimes everything you go through can get lost in the monotony of the fact that you're always going through. So it'd be like, Miranda's having surgery, and it almost gets to the point like, okay, Miranda's having another surgery. You know, like you don't really get too worked up because it's almost a norm.
Yeah, it became a routine.
Yeah. But when Phil came with the journal and asked me to write my thoughts down, that's when I knew like, oh, something is different. Like something's really scary going on. So that was definitely a scary one.
That was prior to having the tumor removed. Yeah. And as much as we were honest with people of how kind of scary it was, we still... The kids were around, and it's depressing to talk about, but we knew going in that the outcome could be, one, it was a risky surgery. I ended up in the hospital for a week and a half. Two, that I got the phone call, cancer-free. It very easily could have gone the other way, and we didn't know what we were doing. And again, 30% of the people see the other side. That's a big difference.
For him to even think to have a journal written for you, like, what a good thought, Phil. Good job.
Yes.
Any husbands out there listening, like, that's a really, really good tip if your wife is going into the hospital.
I don't know when we're posting this thing, but it could be a great Valentine's gift. Get on it now, guys. What kind of journal was that again?
A feel-good journal.
A feel-good journal by all her friends.
So yeah, you would say things are kind of the same now, other than your attitude?
So I switched actually to the keto diet, and I don't want to give you the false hope that it's amazing and it's going to drastically change everything.
We're going to do a whole show on it one day.
It really did change my life, though, in the sense, like, I have more energy. And I think really the idea is eating healthier. You know, getting rid of the white sugars and the flours allows your body to not fight those things that it shouldn't having to be fight. So it gets to focus on the more important stuff of trying to give me the energy that I need to get through my days. And really, so the mindset, I started moving more, which I didn't realize how sedentary I had become until I highly recommend, if you don't know how to talk to your doctor about stuff, you can always Google, like, how did I talk to my doctor because I can't get out of the bed, or whatever it may be. And I came across all of these surveys, and it says, like, what is your quality of life on a 0 to 10 scale? And one of the aha moments, literally, that I was on a scale of 1.
Wow.
And I was like, that's no way to live. And in reality, I wasn't really living. I was just surviving. So between 2017 and 18, I really made the decision, I don't know if I'm going to thrive, but I'm going to try, because surviving is just not where I want to be, because I'm 36 years old. I do plan to live for a really long time. And the thought of staying that mindset for the rest of my life, that's not healthy for anybody, including the kids, to see that.
Correct.
So I've made some small changes that now, a year later, I can look at, I lost 30 pounds. I'm excited by that.
That's a monumental thing for somebody who's in fantastic health. That's a monumental thing. So congratulations.
Thank you. And as happy as I am for that, that's really almost one of the positive side effects.
Right.
It was, the other stuff was so much better. Like, mentally, I'm just in a better, clearer space. I'm trying to stay really positive. I'm also trying to stay really honest, because for a long time, I think I was in denial, where I just thought, everything's amazing. God doesn't give you more than you can handle. We're going to be okay. I went to Christian school. I think that I have a lot of those sayings in my mind, and I just kept feeding them to myself and then feeding them to other people. And then when I'd have a surgery, people would be like, wait, but you've been doing so good. And I'm like, I guess I've just become a good liar.
Right.
But it wasn't that I was purposely lying. I really thought, if I project
if I believe it.
Yes.
Right.
And the more you say it, the more you believe it, and then it'll just become true.
Yeah.
And I think that there is something to be said for a positive attitude, but I also think that denial is not a safe, healthy place to live.
It's a fine line you're trying to toe in that. But I like how you've been saying over again, I decided.
Yeah,
and a lot of changes in life, you need to just decide and, discipline yourself to do it.
Yeah, and I feel like you really took charge of your medical situation. You said you had a great primary, which we're so thankful for, but you always went in with notes, and you kind of kept track of what every doctor was giving you, and you always knew what meds came from who, so you could tell your primary. And I think that's a big takeaway, is you have to be your own advocate, because doctors are going to look at the one issue that you've come to see them for, and if you have several issues, that gets to be a problem. So I think that's a good takeaway. But I know people are going to be touched by your story, and maybe they're going to want to contact you. So how can the people find you?
So right now, I'm on social media as Miranda.plowman. It's Miranda. Ploucher is Ploucher hyphened to Plowman. I know I changed. I was like, we were phone book buddies. It's Plowman. You're not alone. I would love to connect with you, or maybe you have an idea of something that I should try that I haven't tried yet, and we can kind of compare those things. I think the best way, if you're going to give somebody advice, I was thinking about this, wouldn't it be amazing to say, I know what you're going through, kind of, obviously, your personal situation.
To an extent.
Right, but I kind of get it. I feel like you're a pretty educated person who's probably tried a lot of things. I've also tried a lot of things. If you ever want to compare those things, let's chat one day.
Oh, that's such a great way to say, like, I have something, but I don't want to give you it if you don't want it. Because sometimes you don't. Sometimes you're at your tipping point and you don't want to know about the magic snake oil that they have.
Yeah, have you tried magic snake oil?
Okay, so I'm terrified of snakes. That's never going to happen. But I think I've tried everything else.
So if you want to get in touch with her, we're going to have all her information down in the comment section on any one of the avenues that you're listening to this or watching this. So on the YouTube channel, it'll be down in the comments. We are on Podomatic, so you want to listen to us there. We're working on iTunes and Google Play and Spotify, all those, every single one of those. You can find our information, doingliferadio@gmail.com or doingliferadio.com, the website. and we'll have all her information there. Feel free to reach out. Words of encouragement, we'll definitely, if you come directly to us, we will pass them along.
On to her.
For sure. After we take them on ourselves, we'll just say, hey, this is something we want to say to you. And but yeah, for sure, if any of this has touched you or helped you out in any kind of way, reach out to us. Let us know. Yeah. And we're always open to other tips and stories that are out there. Miranda, we definitely appreciate you coming out here today. And I guess if we don't see you tomorrow, we know it's because you were here today. That's a lesson we've learned. And just very excited.
But wait a minute. We're going to end all of our interviews with a quirky question.
We do have a great question for you.
So we have one for you that you don't even know about.
Oh, I'm excited and a little nervous.
So, if you were arrested with no explanation, what would your family assume has happened to you?
Oh, that's interesting.
I guess after the interview, how many doctors are in body bags is my question.
In all honesty, it would probably be for assaulting someone who says something rude. Now, I would like to clarify the assault. I've actually personally never ever punched someone, and I would like to say that I'm smart enough to not do something like that.
You would like to say.
But I don't think I'm against, like, maybe popping your tires.
Oh my gosh.
Duct taping your doors of your house shutter. You know, like I try to be a little bit more on the probably cruel and unusual.
Vandalism.
Exactly. Yes, vandalism. I'm probably being arrested for vandalism.
Okay.
Do I get to answer this question back to you guys?
I mean, sure.
You could ask, but we can.
All right, since we love Joyce more, Sam, you get to answer first, so Joyce gets to think about it.
If I was in jail for something, it would probably be something I said to the wrong person.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah,
I
or in a
pride
courtroom
myself
and I
as
said
being
something.
his translator. He says something and I'll jump right in and say, actually what he meant was, and I'll polish it up a little bit so it sounds a little nicer.
My words come out like a wrecking ball. They just go flying out there.
Yes, and sometimes I just have to buff them out a little bit.
My heart is pure, but my mouth is very direct.
So yeah, if I were arrested, it probably would be because somebody did something to my child. Because if somebody did something to my child, it's on. I don't care who you are. I don't care where we are. I will take you out, Mama Bear.
Yep.
She'll try. And she's been working out, so now there's some viciousness coming to that.
There you go.
So that's a wrap up. We do have the positive comment. We'll let Miranda stay for this. The positive.
Sam does this at the end of all of our shows. He has a positive comment of the day, and he won't let me know what it is. I'm just going to be as surprised as you.
So the positive comment of the day comes from a very smart man by the name of Albert Einstein. So this is a great one. This is actually pretty relevant. It's funny. I did some research on this earlier just to try to find the comment. And I think it's pretty relevant to today. So Albert Einstein said there are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle, and the other is as if everything is a miracle.
I love that.
Yeah.
So it's
Albert.
Yeah.
Good job.
He's done a few things in life. This might be the most dramatic thing he's ever done. This quote right here. And we found it for our podcast. We found it. Well, we want to thank everyone for watching, listening, however you might be interacting with this. Again, you can find us. We are on social media. We are at Doing Life Radio. Facebook, Instagram, you can find us there. If you want to get in touch with us, doingliferadio@gmail.com. Reach out, let us know what you want us to talk about. If you have someone else you think we need to talk to, by all means, send them our way. But again, we say thank you, Miranda, so much. Thank you to your husband for letting you come here this morning, because he's going to have to deal with you tomorrow, right? That's
true.
That's what we learned out of this. And everyone out there listening right now, I know they're curious of what the status of the wedding is, and our kids are friends because their parents are friends. So that's how it rolls right now.
We've already started the wedding plan. Like you said, the photo album is well underway.
We've worked it around one of her surgeries. We're good to go.
Yes,
that's right.
Exactly.
Thank you for watching.
Right,
thank you for listening. See you.
Bye.
Do you gotta say fibromyalgia? Fibromyalgia. Okay. Just making sure.
She doesn't know how to spell it.
I did have to look up how to spell it because I didn't want to look dumb. It's still wrong? Well, that's what my phone said. I was typing it in my...
Why are we recording now?
That was said very quietly.